In 2023, the Detroit Lions won their first playoff game in more than 30 years. And while it was a time of great jubilation for all Lions fans everywhere, one former star player for the Detroit Lions still to this day has a bone to pick with how fans treated the star quarterback upon his return to Detroit. We're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions fans, and welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM, Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. So, I know for some people, they have got to be wondering, what the hell is this episode about? Why is this episode coming out of the blue? Where is this coming from? Well, let's kind of go back in time a little bit, shall we? Wasn't that far back in time, but we're going to go back in time nonetheless. Go back to Wild Card Weekend. We have the Rams coming to town. The Rams are coming to play the freaking Detroit Lions at Ford Field. Matthew Stafford is coming back to his very first game at Ford Field as a member of another team. Couldn't be more heightened, couldn't be bigger of a game, whatever the case might have been. And as we all know, what happens? As soon as Matthew Stafford comes to the city of Detroit, runs out of the tunnel onto Ford Field, out of the away team's tunnel, he gets booed. Now, why is this a big piece of information? Well, let's go back to just prior to that moment in the game. Let's go back to the week prior when we found out that the Rams were going to be our opponent in that playoff game. There was a lot of debate amongst Lions fans about how we were supposed to, kind of treat Matthew Stafford coming to town. Should we, applaud him? Should we not do anything? Should we be neutral? Or should we boo him? There was a lot of conversation on a different amount of social media sites because nobody really truly knew how they should react to Matthew Stafford coming back. Because it's like, hey, yeah, we get it. The man played 12 years here in Detroit. He gave a lot to the organization. He gave a lot to the city. But it's like, dude, this is the playoffs. This is do or die. It's either win or go home. I'm sorry, but for a lot of Lions fans was like, listen, I don't give a damn what the man did for us for over 10 years. The reception you're going to get is, hey, you're coming in here to end our season. You're coming in here as the enemy. It's strictly business. It's not personal. It's business. And that was the response that Lions fans gave Matthew Stafford when he and the Rams came to Detroit. Now, why are we talking about this? Well, let's understand something. Shortly after the game occurred where the Lions won 24-23, former star player for the Detroit Lions, Darius Slay, who's now the cornerback on the Eagles, decided to make a comment about how he stated he was not happy, he was not thrilled, he was very offended, so to speak, about how Lions fans treated his former quarterback, Matthew Stafford. He thought that they were disrespectful, he thought that they were rude, he thought that they were not giving Matthew Stafford the proper respect for everything that he had given to the organization prior to that point. Well, that was back then, and we're talking again about, 6-some months ago. But what's funny is that once again, this whole story has again populated itself back into the recent news waves. Because on Chris Long's podcast, Darius Slay was on the podcast with former player Chris Long. And Chris Long asked Darius Slay a very specific question. He asked Darius Slay about that same playoff game, about the Rams-Lions playoff game in 2023. And he asked Darius Slay straight up. He's like, listen, man. He's like, I got to know. He's like, did you root for the Lions or did you root for Stafford? Well, according to Darius Slay, what he said is that it was a really tough decision. I'm actually going to read the quote right on my phone here so that way you guys can see what it is that I'm actually referring to. Here's what he said. He said, I'm the biggest fan of Stafford because I played with him for 7 years. And I'm a fan of Detroit, man, too, as well. Only thing I didn't like about what Detroit did is when they said they booed him coming out. Now, let's understand something here. We already knew that Darius Slay still had a problem with the whole thing, about Stafford getting booed. We knew that. But what I find still ironic, I find kind of almost petty at this point. Kind of like, Darius Slay is being a bit salty. He's being a bit butthurt about this, is that Stafford was booed. And then it's like, dude, that happened back in January. How in the hell are we in July now and you are still stuck on this? It's like, dude, here's the part about this that just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, Darius, if I could sit down and I could talk to Darius Slay for half a minute, I'd be like, Darius, dude, you've played football longer than virtually most human beings on the planet. And it's like, listen, I understand you have loyalty to your players that played with you for a long time. It's like, yeah, you and Stafford, you played together for 7 years. I get it. You're loyal to him. You're a big fan of him. You like what he did for the city. You liked him as a teammate. You probably like him as a person. But it's like, what I don't understand is that the NFL, while it's all about building personal relationships to a certain degree, the NFL is still a business. I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm going to say this. Let's just play the hypothetical game here. Let's say, for whatever reason, if, freaking Darius Slay was still on the Eagles and one of the best players that the Eagles had while he was there were to all of a sudden go somewhere else and then come to Philadelphia and try and knock them out of the playoffs. Let's say that happened with Jalen Hurts. You're going to honestly tell me, Darius Slay, that you wouldn't expect that the Philadelphia Eagles fans would boo freaking, Jalen Hurts if he were to come to town and try and knock off the Eagles and not being able to go to the freaking, next round of the playoffs? That's not going to happen. I know the Eagles. It might be the city of brotherly love, but I guarantee you this, they're as feisty as any other fan base in the NFL. They will boo no matter who comes into their town, whether you're an ex-Eagles player or not. So it's like, for me, it's like, this idea that Darius Slay is still upset, he still has a problem with Lions fans booing Matthew Stafford. There's a couple of things about this that just don't make any sense to me. Now that we've had some time to, kind of look back on the situation, we've had a chance to process all the information. First and foremost, number one, after the game came out and we kind of got the mic'd up versions of the game between the players and we heard Matthew Stafford's mic'd up version, he actually was prompting as he was running on the field to the Lions fans to, hey, boo me more. Like, come on, let's go. I already know what's coming. Stafford knew he was going to get booed. Stafford knew he wasn't going to come into that city. He wasn't going to come into that Ford Field and he was going to get a warm reception. Stafford knew what he was walking into. It's like, listen, Stafford knew what those Lions fans had been through better than almost anybody else. If he honestly thought that walking into Ford Field, when it was the Lions' first realistic shot in forever to win a playoff game, that he was going to get a rosy, warm welcome, I can guarantee you this, he'd be insane. He'd be crazy. And the fact that, somehow Darius Slay thought that he was either going to get a warm welcome or a rosy welcome, or if nothing else, just, hey, whatever, we're not going to pay any attention to him as he walks on the field, he's also crazy. I'm sorry, there's no way Lions fans were going to let Matthew Stafford come in there and be like, oh yeah, you know what? Yeah, we recognize what you did for us for 12 years, but you know what? If you come in and you knock us off, we're not going to take offense to that. We're not going to have a problem with that. There's no way in hell that was going to happen. No chance in hell. And for Darius Slay, who played in Detroit for as long as he did, the fact that, he still has a problem with this, it makes me wonder if he truly understands what Lions fans were really all about. Yes, we are very loyal to the players that play for us. We also have a great affinity for ex-players that play for us, especially good ones. But at the end of the day, we're not fans of players first and foremost. We are fans of the Detroit Lions. That is where it starts and ends for us. After that, it's like, okay, are you a fan of this player, whatever the case might be. But we're all Detroit Lions fans. That's where it starts. That's where it ends for us. Now, I'm going to say this. I think, and this is me spitballing. I'm going to say that right now. I'm not saying there's any proof of this. This is me presenting my opinion. And this is me pretty much like I'm saying, spitballing. The only other thing that I can think of as to why Darius Slay might have a problem with how Lions fans treated Matthew Stafford with booing him is, well, we have to understand something here. While Lions fans were very emphatic with how they booed Matthew Stafford, they were just as emphatic in how they praised Jared Goff. Think about it. As Jared Goff was coming on the field, just as much as they booed Stafford, they were chanting Jared Goff's name, saying, Jared Goff, Jared Goff. And then after we won the game, the chants were even as loud as ever. And then think about this, even after the game, even after the season, the chants have been followed every single place where Detroit sports are played. We've heard it at Piston games. We've heard it at hockey games. We heard it at the freaking draft in Detroit. When Jared Goff was at the podium, they were chanting his name because of Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was prompting them. I'm just gonna say this right now. Maybe part of the reason that Darius Slay is still butthurt about it is because in his eyes, Matthew Stafford played for Detroit for 12 years, gave everything that he had, which he does talk about in the freaking interview with Chris Long, and yet Jared Goff, who's only been here now going on 4 years, has gotten a much more warmer welcome than Matthew Stafford virtually ever got while he was here. Now, if that's the case, which again, I have no proof. This is just me observing a situation and saying, could this possibly be why there's a problem here? Could this possibly be the reason why Darius Slay is still butthurt? And for me, there's actually, I think, a kind of a viable reason as to why this could work. Because think about it, folks. Matthew Stafford played in Detroit for 12 years. He never really got the recognition of a talented player that he ever should have. Because I'm just going to say it. Matthew Stafford, he's a talented quarterback. All of us Lions fans know it. The guy can make throws that very few quarterbacks can make. And he was doing throws that got the recognition from Patrick Mahomes before Patrick Mahomes even came on the scene. But the problem is that what we Lions fans also know is that who actually won here in Detroit? Who actually got the job done? Was it Matthew Stafford or was it Jared Goff? Well, at the end of the day, that's a very simple answer. It's Jared Goff. Jared Goff was the one who won that first playoff game. Jared Goff was the one that won that first division crown. Jared Goff was the one that got us to that conference championship game. And again, I'm not saying that Jared Goff did it all by himself, but I'm simply saying Goff was the quarterback when that was done, not Stafford. And if there are people out there that are still Stafford fans, great, grand, glorious. I'm a Stafford fan myself. But let's call the reality for what it is. And let's take a look at from where Darius Slay is sitting. I understand because Darius Slay is like, listen, yeah, you know what? Stafford didn't have the top offensive line that Jared Goff has right now and all this other stuff. Okay, but that's irrelevant in my point. Again, this is why I have the conversations that I have about Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford, because this conversation, this debate, this controversy is not going away. And when you have players like Darius Slay who keep kind of reigniting it here every now and again, it continues to come up. I understand what Darius Slay and what other Lions fans have said about Stafford not having the same kind of talent that Jared Goff had. But let's be entirely fair. There was talent that Stafford had that Jared Goff didn't have or doesn't have. Jared Goff didn't have Megatron. Matthew Stafford had freaking Megatron for what? The majority of his time here in Detroit? And yet, never won a playoff game. Never won a division crown with Megatron, the second best wide receiver probably in all of NFL history. Had a guy that he literally almost threw 2,000 yards to in one season. Yes, I get it. He doesn't have the running game. He doesn't have the offensive line. But that doesn't also mean that Matthew Stafford didn't have a chance to win that division crown. It doesn't mean he didn't have that chance to win that first playoff game. Because what most people forget is this. Go back to the 2014 season. Lions were tied with the Packers at the very end of the season in 2014. It was a winner-takes-all at Lambeau Field for the Lions to have the chance to have the number one seed going into the playoffs, to have that divisional bye round. All they had to do was beat the mother-flippin' Packers. That's all they had to do. That's all Stafford had to do to win that division crown, to secure that divisional bye. That's all he had to do. And what happened? At the very end of the game, Matthew Stafford coughed up the ball. Go back, check it out on ESPN. You can check the game log, you can check the play-by-play. How did that game end? It ended because Matthew Stafford fumbled the ball on a turnover. And that was how the Packers won. Then, okay, fine, you don't get the divisional crown. Okay, whatever. But still, you have a chance to win that playoff game in 2014. That was the best roster that Stafford had, both offense and defense. And yet, when he goes into Jerry World against the Cowboys, what happens? Stafford has a multitude of turnovers in that game. And again, how does that game end? Go back, check ESPN, check the play-by-play. It ends because Matthew Stafford has a fumble at the very end of the game. I understand that's the game with the pass interference call that has become famous, or not famous, infamous in Detroit. I get that. That's a huge factor as well. But Stafford had a chance at the very end of the game to win the game, and he still coughed up the ball and he lost it. That's the difference between Goff and Stafford here in Detroit. When Stafford had the chance to be the hero, when Stafford had the chance to step up and make those plays, he quite literally coughed the ball up. When Goff did it, he stepped up, he made those plays. Think about it. What did Dan Campbell do with Jared Goff at the very end of the game for the Rams? He put the ball in Goff's hand. They threw the game-winning route to Amon-Ra St. Brown. That was it. Take your knee, you win the game, 24-23. The Lions put the ball in Goff's hand. Goff delivered. When the Lions tried to do it for Matthew Stafford didn't deliver. I don't want to hear about, oh, well, you know what, had Stafford had this, that, or other. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. The point of the matter is, did you do it when you had the resources that you had? Were you able to get the job done when the job was presented to you? Did you take a hold of that opportunity? Goff did. Stafford did not. So when I hear Darius Slay that says, oh, well, he's still butthurt, he's still salty about Lions fans booing Matthew Stafford in a playoff game, it's like, dude, I'm sorry to tell you this, Darius Slay, but it's a playoff game. It's a winner-takes-all, do-or-die competition. I am not going to cheer or give a neutral response to freaking Matthew Stafford coming to Ford Field to knock us out of the playoffs. I'm sorry, I don't know what the Louisville world you live in, but it's not going to happen. And the fact that you're still butthurt about it 7 months later tells me that you don't have your priorities right. Because I guarantee you, like I said, if another player were to come into your home stadium as an Eagle that was a former Eagle player, and they were going to try and knock you off, you wouldn't give them a warm welcome. You wouldn't say, oh, come here, buddy, let's hug it out. I hope you have a great game today. Be like, no, I hope you lose. Because I want to move on to the next round. I want to get that money bonus. I want to get closer to a Super Bowl. You're not going to welcome your brother with open arms. You're going to be like, hey, you know what? On the field, we're enemies. But after the game, then we can have a beer. Then we can have ourselves a time to sit down and talk like civil adults. Otherwise, from kickoff to the end of the game, you're my enemy and I'm trying to put you through the turf. That's how football is. So if Darius Slay is still butthurt about the fact that Lions fans, booed Matthew Stafford, I got one thing to say. Get the hell over it. It's ancient history. Lions won, Stafford and the Rams lost. That's the end of it. And how we treated Stafford, Stafford's not complaining. Stafford's not crying about it. Stafford expected it. So why are you still crying about it, Darius Slay? Get over it. But anyway, kind of went off on a tangent there. Sorry to say it, but you know what? Stuff like this kind of gets under my skin. And it's like, dude, I played football. I never played professional football, but I played in college. I played in high school. I played in middle school. It's like, listen, football is competitive. And I don't care if you had a guy that used to play with you and then went to another school or went somewhere else. I'm not going to give you a high five and cheer you on before the game or during the game. After the game, maybe. But prior to, it's like, no, you're my enemy and I'm going to do whatever it takes to stop you. I don't care. But I'm going to end it right here because I could go on forever. Having said that, I'm going to say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past and forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and not had a chance to do so, again, highly encourage y'all to subscribe. But I also encourage y'all to do one of these three things. I also encourage y'all to do this. I already said that. Make sure you hit that bell notification icon at the bottom of the page. Also encourage y'all to please share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can. The more we can share it, the greater the channel grows and the greater the spread of the channel. And with that, I hope everybody's enjoyed the content. I hope y'all are doing well. I hope y'all got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.